because the hoses aren't very big. Recall that it's much easier to put these hoses on there if they're a little wet. So just dampen that hose. I don't want this to get wet though. Screw that on nice and tight. And this end, put the weight on so it doesn't come flying out of the sink. And let's take that off. Now I'm going to hang that over that so that it doesn't kink. Baker's clean. Put that back. So we're up at 160. May need to crank this a little bit more. I don't really want to start heating until I'm about ready to add, so I'm just going to leave that sit for a bit. See if I can tighten that. Now I can go ahead and turn on the water, fill the condenser, and get a nice flow rate. That's a pretty good flow rate. And I'm just going to tilt that a little further so it doesn't kink. And maybe not, because I want the drip tip on the bottom. Grab an iron ring. Can hang the hoses over this so it doesn't kink. That'll work. This thing keeps loosening itself. So what we want is we want to get this t-butylacetoacetate heated up to the 170, the temperature for the reaction, and then drip the morpholine in because we want it to react pretty quickly, and then it's going to distill over, we hope. So I'll need a thermometer in there so I can measure the temperature of the distillate. And since t-butanol, which is supposedly the distillate, boils below 100, I can use a smaller, well, actually this goes up to 200, so we're good. I was going to say I could use a 100-degree thermometer. There we go, this is a 100-degree thermometer. We'll use this one. A little more accurate. So that's going to go in so the top of the bulb is at the bottom of the side arm. So we're measuring the temperature of what's actually coming over. And then we'll tighten that up. You should see that rise and then fall again when the distillation is over. So we're about 165. We'll crank that a little bit more. I'm going to give this another shake just for the hell of it. Really wants to kink. Just as long as it keeps flowing, it's okay. I need to bring this out a little bit. So that it will reach. Maybe a little more. Really nice if that stopped loosening itself. Alright, we're about 168. Looks like a setting of 250 on the hot plate is necessary to keep the block at 170. And it may be necessary to insulate the Plazen adapter with some glass woolen foil. Just to keep the whole assembly warm. I'm going to go ahead and wrap that preemptively. On the assumption that we will need to do it. So otherwise it cools and it kind of never reaches the thermometer. Alright, we've hit 170. I'm going to lower that just a little so we don't overshoot. And we'll now lower that assembly into our hot block. And turn on our stir, about 450. Should get that stirring nicely. So lower that all the way down. I think that's touching. At least close. There we go. Tighten that up. So we got a good stir rate. Those blocks, tight auxiliary blocks, so everything should be kept nice and warm. And I can put that thermometer back in. Move that a little bit. Alright, it's being difficult. Move that around so the thermometer hole's on the other side. So we can continue to check our temperature block. So let that come back up. Hopefully we're still stirring. Yep. Alright, so now we can actually get this set properly. Get it as close as I can. And there's less kinking now that it's closer. So it should come back up to 170 pretty quick. The contents should be nicely at temperature. So we'll measure out another 1.05 milliliters of Morpholine. And again, we want to take it about the same distance above the 1 mil mark as that is above the 0.9. That sounds about right. Kind of an estimate. And we're at 170, so I'm going to put that needle through there and start adding this slowly. So we'll add about half a milliliter to start with. And maintaining our 170 degree block. I think the boiling point of t-butylacetoacetate is about 190, if I remember correctly. So we're a little bit below its boiling point. We're not going to be quite refluxing. But I do want to keep adjusting this to make sure it doesn't overshoot too much. The boiling point's on the bottle. 72 degrees at 11 millimeters of mercury. Have to correct. So we'll just drip in another half milliliter. And we're watching this thermometer. If we heat it too hot or for too long, that'll turn all orange, and that will inhibit the crystallization later. Make it more difficult to isolate the solid product from this reaction. And we're overshooting a little, so I'm going to lower that. It's right around 250 on the heat dial, but maybe a little less. I'm going to crank this up to 600 on the stirrer. Make sure that the spin vane stays spinning pretty vigorously. Yep, looking good. I think you can see that on the condenser there's a kind of a lip there. Some of our liquid product's going to get stuck there, so we'll have to tip that vertical to get the rest of the liquid out. So since nothing's happening, I'm going to go tear this vial. That way we can get a mass of the contents. Get our theoretical yield of the liquid product. Guess I'm not going to tear it, I'm going to get a mass. So the mass of the 3 milliliter conical vial looks like it's 19 it's fluctuating a lot, 19.48. 19.479 grams. Seems to be stable now. So 19.479 grams on the 3 ml conical vial. Put that back under. We're definitely up at temperature. I'm going to add another half milliliter, so I've added 1.5 so far. Nothing happening here yet. But that's not unexpected. And while I'm waiting, I'm going to grab a couple more labels. And this reaction's on page 47 of my notebook. So we'll have ECl-10-47A, that will be the liquid, and ECl-10-47B, that'll be the residue in the vial. But I'm not going to put the label on yet, since I weighed it without the label. And this guy's sitting there, looking happy. You can see it's very faintly, maybe if I hold it against the TLC, you can see it's very faintly yellow. It'll go more yellow over time as it sits. So these I'm done with. Goes away. Put these guys back. And I guess I'm just going to leave this. Since that's the only thing that's ever used for. We're going to add another 0.5 milliliter.